See, in wildlife conservation or nature conservation, what is very important is quantitative information. If you say, okay, I'm trying to save elephants, one of my biggest benchmarks is to be seeing if elephant population or elephant habitat is increasing or decreasing, or has it remained stable. A positive success story shows elephant habitat or elephant numbers goes up or it has remained stable. If it's going down, then it's showing that our work is not contributing positively towards the cause. But unfortunately, a lot of people are missing this quantitative information. It's become too much of storytelling, which is important, but it also needs to be backed up with data.
Welcome to Luminary Lounge, Insights from Lives Well Lived. I'm your host, Dr. Aruna Muralidhar, and today we have with us a remarkable individual who walks the fine line between humans and wildlife quite literally. An electrical engineer who found his calling in the wild, our guest has survived a leopard attack, expanded protected areas across Karnataka, and also authored several interesting books, including the celebrated books Second Nature, Saving Tiger Landscapes in the 21st Century, and Leopard Diaries, and some in the local language Kannada, such as Shalayalli Chirate Matte Innishtu Kathegalu, and several other Kannada books, which I'm sure many more in the pipeline. He's completed his master's degree in conservation biology from the University of Kent, United Kingdom, where he received the Maurice Swingland Award for the Best Postgraduate Student of the Year. His dissertation for the MSc won 2 major international awards. He's a recipient of the Carl Zeiss Wildlife Conservation Award for 2011 and the Whitley Award winner in 2017, fondly known as the Green Oscar, and has been instrumental in establishing 5 new wildlife sanctuaries and a conservation reserve in Karnataka. When he's not tracking big cats or advocating for conservation, he's writing powerful narratives in both English and Kannada, increasing awareness on wildlife and making wildlife conservation accessible to local communities. From installing the first camera traps in Karnataka to securing crucial wildlife corridors and taking up Herculean tasks such as shutting forest highways to traffic at night, his work has been pivotal in shaping India's conservation landscape. Join me in welcoming Dr. Sanjay Gubbi, PhD in leopard ecology and conservation, a wildlife biologist, conservationist, and a passionate voice for our wilderness. Mr. Sanjay, welcome to our Luminary Lounge.
Thank you, madam. Thank you so much for inviting me onto Luminary Lounge. I'm delighted to be here this evening.
Thank you, sir. Looking forward to a very interesting conversation with you. Mr. Sanjay, to start off with, could you share a very fun or unexpected fact about yourself that most people might not know?
A fun fact? I don't know if I really have fun facts. I have lots of fun facts in life. But about me, which people may not expect, is that I'm a very short-tempered man. People think I'm a very calm individual, but I'm quite short-tempered man, which may surprise a lot of people, actually.
Oh, right. So behind the gentle demeanor is, a little bit of ire. And
Absolutely.
But I guess that's required for many, many projects that you're taking up. So let's go back to your childhood. What was growing up like for you? And were there any specific moments or experiences that sparked your passion for wildlife and conservation?
I mostly grew up in peri-urban Karnataka or rural Karnataka in a lot of places because my father was in a transferable job. He was working for the government. A lot of small place upbringing, really made my personality today. I think if you grow up in rural and peri-urban Karnataka, life a lot of lessons are taught through life, through upbringing. The society teaches you a lot of things, which many people may learn in master's graduate in business administration or in other schools, learning life personality skills or life skills. But if you grow up in rural parts of Karnataka or perhaps in any other rural part, a lot of life skills are imbibed into you through your upbringing, through the society, through working with other people in the area. So that made me as a strong individual, that made me as an individual who's resilient, perhaps.
Hmm.
It made
Hmm.
me as an individual who understands the society, especially the
Yeah.
socio-economic and political aspects of the society far better, which is really helping me today to do wildlife conservation.
Absolutely. I think you've hit the nail on its head. I mean, resilience, which is a hard skill to develop on your own, unless you've got a background of that kind, which lots of adversity, probably the even to a certain extent, the, as you rightly said, socioeconomic background and having to swim against the tide when everybody else wants you to do something else. So let's go back to your childhood. I mean, was there any particular mentor or your parents themselves who actually, uh, let's say, instilled in you the values that really are important to you in what you do now?
Perhaps, yes, culturally we were brought up and religiously as well that every life other than, along with
Mm.
human life, also have a right to live on this planet. So we strongly, culturally, we believe that live and let live was very important. We also believe ahimsa paramo dharma was very important. So I think that imbibed some amount of, or a large part of me, which believed that animals have a right to live on this planet. Nature has a right to live.
True.
Nature certainly has a big right on this planet. Uh, and also, when I was growing up in my high school days, I was part of the scout movement. And scouting is all about being out in nature.
Wow.
It also teaches you a lot of discipline. So you go on camping, you go on hiking, you go on cycling, go on bird watching, stargazing. I think that's where my first interest in nature was brought into myself. But since I also grew up in leopard country. A lot of places in the Deccan Plateau, the rocky outcrops, which are key habitats for variety of wildlife species. I think that also inspired me to get into nature and to like nature, perhaps. And importantly, my mother's village is in Mysore district, and we spent a lot of time in my grandfather's house in Mysore district in a small village called Saligrama, which was amidst and next to the village was a huge tank, and I used to walk around in these places and also in the agricultural fields. I think it brought me closer to nature, and automatically, without knowing, without being part of any formal education in nature, I think it really brought in a sense of love towards nature to me in those days.
I think these are very, very strong roots, and you haven't forgotten your roots, and you're trying to strengthen them along the way, which is amazing. I mean, as far as your conservation efforts and the journey is concerned, you've been at the forefront of conservation in India for decades. What would you say has been the most significant milestone in your journey so far? I know there have been so many, but what for you is the most significant one?
See, in the mid 80s and late 80s, I started to go to this beautiful place called Nagarhole National Park, which is very popular these days in India, or many people call it as Kabini. Kabini is a small part of Nagarhole National Park. That's where I started picking up my skills about large mammals, about elephants, about tigers, leopards, wild dogs. And there I also saw that how critical protected areas were for the country and for the country's wildlife and also for biodiversity. I think that really put in a strong sense of that there was a necessity for land tenure security for wildlife in this country. So I think one of my biggest and happiest achievements has been increasing the protected area network in Karnataka state from a geographical area of about 3% to about 5.5% of the state's geographical area is now brought under protected area, and that was possible due to working with a variety of people, including political leaders, bureaucrats, not just from the forest department, also from other government agencies, media, and several other social leaders who supported that cause. So I think that particular expansion of protected areas, also notifying and gazetting new protected areas in Karnataka, including Hills Wildlife Sanctuary, could be expansion of Kaveri Wildlife Sanctuary, notifying a new protected area for chinkaras in Tumkur district, or a new protected area for four-horned antelopes in Davangere district, and several other, expanding our Someshwara Wildlife Sanctuary or Anchi Dandeli Wildlife Sanctuaries. it was the largest expansion of protected areas anywhere in the country after 1970s, and
Wow.
that was very much important, especially in the current changing scenario in the country's social and economic perspective. It brought in security, land security for wildlife. So, which
Mm.
is very important. If there is land which is conserved, there is space for both wildlife and for people. If the land is lost, there's nothing, neither for wildlife nor for people. When I say for people, it's also the ecosystem services or the all the benefits people gain from these kind of forests or from
Mm.
protected areas in terms of water, climate regulation, flood control, etc. So many other benefits that forests give humanity. I think I'm
Mm.
very happy and proud about this particular achievement. We continue to ensure that there are more protected areas in our state.
That's an amazing achievement. So just interlinking the corridors, I mean, the biodiverse corridors, and making sure that the expansion happens on its own naturally, right? But once you've done that without human intervention, automatically things start happening on their own, isn't it? And you've said in your book that conservation work is often challenging and chaotic.
Yeah.
Um, and there are so many layers of challenges from the locals, forest guards, bureaucrats, forest department, government officials, and all that. But you have managed to somehow negotiate through, and not only being a scientist and being an academician, but you've learned to negotiate through all sorts of adversities. So what was some of the biggest obstacles you have faced, and how did you overcome that? What are the soft skills that you had, or was there any particular way that I know you could convince them by giving them the other advantages to a particular project?
See, conservation and perhaps for many other social causes in this country, you need a lot of patience and perseverance.
Mhm.
Um, Conservation, at least, is certainly not a T20 game. It's a test cricket format. You really need to be a very hard batsman with a lot of patience, lot of resilience, and you need to and it's fast bowlers bowling. Especially the times of perhaps Malcolm Marshall, Michael Holding, kind of Andy Roberts kind of bowlers on the other side, and you really need to be very strong to face these kind of fast bowlers in conservation. And you'll surely get a lot of hits on your body while you're doing conservation. It's exactly like facing fast bowlers, especially the West Indian fast bowlers during their prime time in the
Mhm.
80s, 90s. So when you get into this field, you shouldn't be expecting that you're going to play um, uh, very soft form of cricket. You're going to play really hard format of cricket, long format, and you need to be ready to take those blows from Marshalls and Michael Holdings and Courtney Walsh or Ambrose. So you need to be mentally be prepared for it. Otherwise, you can be an academician who just enjoys learning about wildlife, about nature and their interrelationships, etc. And you publish a paper, nobody is going to comment about you, nobody is going to critique, nobody is going to say what I can call as bad things about you. It's a very nice, cushy job being an academician.
Yeah, where's the application in it? There's no
Yeah,
applied.
application in it. But only when you like, if I draw parallels from your field, if you're a surgeon and you're learning on the job and you also have to show the best results, even a small mistake you'll be critiqued. Even if you have done the best of your efforts. So only people who try, only people who want to make changes are the ones who will be actually targeted. And for that, you need to have life skills where you
Yeah.
need to be self resilient, not just self resilient, but you need to be self appreciative. The world is not going to appreciate you in a very big way if you do really hardcore, if you try to really bring hardcore changes. It's the same. It's not just now, but even historically, when philosophers and scientists said Earth was round, they were really targeted. When they said the sun doesn't orbit around the earth, but it's the other way around, they were also critiqued. So it's only people who really think differently, who want to make a big change in society, they're the ones who will be targeted. And I always take this quote from Dr. Manmohan Singh, the former prime minister of this country, that history will be kinder to him, history and media will be kinder to him, he said, because he was very strongly critiqued. But we current day Indians, we see the economic prosperity which was, and the foundation that
Yeah.
was laid by Dr. Manmohan Singh. So it's always like this, when you're doing larger things, when you're when you're thinking beyond the box, you'll have to be prepared for these kinds of critiques. And for that,
Mm,
you need to be very strong-hearted.
absolutely.
The field of conservation is certainly not for the weak-hearted, I would say.
Big-hearted. Yeah, like the big cats that you study, like a lion heart. True. But was like you're almost like a one-man army. Did you have people like a team who backed you up, who would, so cushion things for you? How did you work? Because again, it's not a very simple job. It involves so many layers of, let's say stakeholders. So was it like a team, or have you been solely managing most of these projects?
No, it's always a teamwork. It's always a teamwork. You need a lot of people with different skill sets to help you.
Mm.
You are perhaps the pivot driver, but you need all those other wheels in the cog. You need people who can help you with GIS skills. You need people who can help you with admin skills. But very importantly, the critical social leaders in the society. It can be a political leader, it can be a religious leader, it can be a media personal, it can be so many other people or a bureaucrat who can make changes for conservation. So they are all extremely important. So in my opinion, conservation is a lot about communication. It's perhaps 90% communication and 10% science. So you understand animals and you understand wildlife from a scientific perspective, but how you communicate to people and to different stakeholders is extremely important. I can't go and talk to a political leader with statistics and with a lot of scientific information. They don't have time, their attention span is very less, and they may not understand the complications of statistical details or scientific methodologies. So we need to communicate to them in a language they understand. When I say language,
Mm.
not the literal language, but in stories, but in methods and in ways which they will get impressed and they will appreciate the importance of wildlife conservation. So, for example, if you talk to a political leader, you need to demonstrate to them what him or her or his constituency will gain from it. That's a
Mm.
key thing to make them understand why conservation is important. But I can't use the same tool perhaps with a bureaucrat. I may have to use a different language. I may have to use a different skill set altogether there. So you need to know how to pitch and when to pitch and whom to pitch different aspects of conservation. And that's a very important thing. And that doesn't come through any textbook. Um,
Absolutely.
those things are not taught in your
So,
master's course. It's not taught
yeah.
in you don't learn it in your coursework during your PhD. That
True.
comes naturally for some people, but you also need to learn from the society, from the world.
True. It's so intuitive, isn't it? You've got to be intuitive. You've got to, as you rightly said, pitch to the right people. So many people skills involved. Um, and how do you balance the needs of humans and wildlife in your conservation efforts? I mean, there's always a balance, isn't it? You can't go too much towards conservation and, let's say human traffic and the roads. So, or, what has been your guiding principle when making tough decisions? Let's say, for example, the highways in Bandipur. You could close them in the night for the night jungle life to continue, but then there had to be some sort of a traffic control elsewhere, a traffic flow elsewhere. So, what was your guiding principle when going through these tough decisions?
You always need to be prepared with alternatives. So if you
Mm.
go to meet the chief minister or a decision maker, you can't take a problem to them. You need to go with a solution as well. So that's a
Mm.
key point in conservation, perhaps with several other things. If you just take problems to them, then you end up being a complaint box. And they are not just leaders for conservation. They also have to look at society's development in terms of economics, in terms of health, education, and so many other things. They also need to develop industries for jobs and so many other reasons. So they are not leaders or political leaders or decision makers only for conservation. So, but they are willing to listen to you. There is a very wrong opinion in the society that all political leaders are bad. They're all corrupt. They don't have any idea about how to do good for the society. And similar opinion exists about bureaucrats. But I have a contradictory viewpoint. Yes, they're corrupt, they're inefficient, they're unprofessional, but they're just a reflection of the society, right? If the society was
Mm.
also highly professional, if the society was also completely non-corrupt, we wouldn't have had such leaders. But amidst all this gloom and doom, they also have a heart. They also, are willing to do something for the society. That's what we need to pitch on to. So if you went with the right approach and demonstrate that you're trying to do something good for the society and go with an alternative, a solution. They're always looking for solutions. They're not good at conservation. They don't know the science of conservation. But if you, as a scientist or as a conservationist, explain to them the problem, but also tell them what the solution is and the need to protect it, they're willing to listen. So out of 10 problems, they may support you for two, but at least it's a lot better than getting zero or minus. So in the field of conservation, your success rate is only 20 to 30%. We can't expect 90% or 100% success rate because, like you rightly said earlier, there are too many stakeholders and too many people who want a chunk of the nature. So we need to really balance it out so that we also look into the needs of people, the larger society, but also of the wildlife. But we prioritize wildlife, and when we prioritize wildlife, we give alternatives to people. The big good examples are the closure of night traffic for vehicular traffic through Bandipur Tiger Reserve or Nagaruleo Tiger Reserve. We just didn't ask them to close it, but we found out alternative routes so that traffic can continue to move even during night time. That's what everybody agreed, and that's what they appreciated. Even the court withstood it. Even the court said, yeah, this is a good alternative. Why don't we work on it? So in conservation, you have to go with a problem, but also with a solution, not just being a complaint box. It doesn't.
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm sure when you gave these alternatives, a lot of technology came into your, rescue. For example, cartography and the maps and the maps of the forest, or even camera trapping, for example, to see where the density of the animals lay. And so how did technology help you through this journey, especially to interlink, different sanctuaries? I mean, sorry, reserves, etc. How did that help you through the journey?
To be very honest, yeah, wildlife science needs a lot of technology these days. Genetics is playing a big role in wildlife science. GIS has got a big role. AI now has a big role. Drones have a big role. But these are all to do with academics part of wildlife. But to do conservation, on ground changes, you really don't need a lot of technology actually. What you need is human resources. What you need is the sympathy from people. What you need, the love from people. And this goes back to your drawing room, about relationships. How you build relationships over a longer time with various stakeholders. It can be a political leader, it can be a media personnel, it can be a bureaucrat, it can be anybody who can bring in influence for wildlife conservation. So we go back to the old skills in human society, which is relationships. No technology, I'll tell you very honestly, can beat this. You're the best of the doctor also. You go there because he's a very humane doctor. That's the priority a patient would look at.
True.
Even if the doctor is very good with robotic surgery, if his relationship with the patients is not very good, I don't think he or she can succeed. So the primary thing is relationship, how a doctor would look at a patient humanely, how approachable the doctor is. And the rest is actually not a major thing. All those things can be built up if this is very strong. So for on-ground, this relationships are extremely important.
Absolutely. You're drawing a lot of comparisons between medicine and conservation. And I totally agree. Empathy, compassion, and just, being able to connect at that level, I think matter a lot. But now
also
coming to your
you're a doctor. You're a doctor, and my wife is also a doctor. I think I'm giving more examples for that reason.
Yes, I'll come to that. Right. You've authored books, that have inspired many. What inspired you to start writing, and how do you approach storytelling in the context of conservation? I mean, because there's so many stories, so many anecdotes, so many stories which can inspire people, because ultimately it's all about stories, and nothing can move a person more than a story. So what exactly brought you into this, becoming an author?
In wildlife, we see every day we see nature's marvels, right? A beautiful landscape, or a very sweet singing bird, or an extremely sweet smelling flower, or the magnificence of the relationship between an elephant calf and its mother. All these things can it moves us, it moves us, it makes us, it inspires us to do more for wildlife conservation. But if I need to take the same thing to a drawing board and explain it to other people, there are only two formats. One, I can make films or I can write. And these are the two forms where you can actually show what you have written to other people, which can perhaps inspire and make them also see how beautiful nature is and how lovely wildlife are. So that inspired me to bring whatever I had experienced to the drawing rooms of thousands of people, at least not millions of people. So I started writing. Initially, I started writing articles in newspapers.
Uh-huh.
And at some point of time, I think I thought I should start bringing out books as well. So I started writing books. And I'm even today, I'm very clear that my books have to come both in Kannada and in English. So I try to
Okay.
alternate them because English is a language, international language. It reaches everybody across the globe. But Kannada is something which is very important because people who live in and around forests, in and around protected areas, people who
Mm.
live with wildlife, with elephants raiding their crops or leopards picking up their livestock, they also need to read about wildlife. And that is
Mm.
possible only if we communicate through local language.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
Maybe Kannada or Tamil or Telugu or Marathi or Hindi or Bengali. It's extremely important that we communicate in local languages. I get
Yeah.
so many phone calls. One day a very young man called me from the Western Ghats. He said, "Sir, I'm a priest in a small temple in a small village in the Western Ghats. I've come on a motorbike 12 kilometers to get my mobile signal so that I can call you." You know, it's amazing. He read my
Oh,
book,
love.
Shalegate Chirite Mattu Itara Kathegadu, and he drove 12 kilometers on a motorcycle to call me on his mobile phone because there's no network in
Oh,
his village. And I was very impressed that it reached such
yeah.
remote areas and remote parts of Karnataka. Many people who have read such
Absolutely.
my books have now become advocates of wildlife conservation. It can be small places
Amazing.
like small towns like Jaglur in Davangere district in central Karnataka,
Mm-hmm.
or people who have read books in several other parts. I have some people who wrote to me recently from Finland who said, "We read your book on leopard diaries. I mean, the book Leopard Diaries. We are so inspired. We want to do something for wildlife." So this is the kind of spectrum of people we need to address. And that's possible only if you write both in an international language and in local language.
Absolutely. And I love your style, sir. I'm very impressed with your style. It's straightforward. There's no frills, but you have conveyed the content, conveyed the meaning in such a beautiful way. I really love the book, Second Nature, Saving Tiger Landscapes, and I'm looking forward to reading the Leopard Diaries. I must say I haven't read it yet.
Uh, It's
And
very
Vanya,
you can't make books very complicated. If
yes,
you pick
it
up a
has to
book, you
be.
should also be searching for your dictionary. It should be in a language which everybody understands. If your words are
Yeah.
very complicated, if your sentences are complicated, I sometimes read books and I'll be searching for dictionary. I go online and look at words, meanings of words. That makes life very
No.
complicated. You might learn a new word, but it doesn't make the reader enjoy. The
Yeah, does
continuity breaks there.
that's true.
So keep it
That's
simple,
true.
keep it enjoyable, and what is very important is we need to. They shouldn't be reading the book. They should be seeing the whatever we are trying to explain. That's extremely
Yes,
important when you write a book.
absolutely. It has to just pan out in front of them in their
Exactly.
imagination.
It's like in Montessori or in pre-primary, the children will be asked to tell a story, right? Show and tell.
Mm,
Something called a show and tell
yeah,
activity. So kids get a doll or something toy and they tell
yeah,
about it. So your book is the doll or the toy, and the reader should feel it. They should hear it. They should not just be reading it. They should view what we are writing to them. That's very
yes.
important. That's when they really enjoy the book.
Spoken like a true author, and that's very true. So, any books or documentaries or shows that have deeply influenced your thinking or work? Any recommendations for our listeners? David Attenborough, perhaps, or whatever has been very influential in your work.
There are several books in our field which are extremely nice to read and very easy reading. There's a science author called David Quammen,
Uh huh.
Quammen. David
Uh huh.
Quammen. He's a science author from the US. He writes beautifully. He has not just written about wildlife, but he has also written about various viruses, including Ebola and coronavirus.
Oh,
And
I
that will be
see.
very interesting for people who are interested in science. And it's very nice language. I also like author called Eric Dinestein, again an American author who writes about wildlife. I enjoy reading George Schaller, who is another American author and a wildlife
Mhm.
biologist. Wonderful writers. In Canada, my interests are much larger. I love reading Kuempu. Of course, I
Oh,
like Purnachandra Tejasvi. There are a lot of good authors in Canada, and I really love reading these authors.
right.
So I would certainly, and these days there are a lot of nice books about plants actually in English. Peter Wohlleben is one author who writes a lot about plants and their
Mhm.
relationship with nature or with other animals, or how other animals or life systems benefit from
Yeah.
plants and trees. I would strongly recommend your viewers to read Peter Wohlleben. Wonderful
Mhm.
books he has authored.
Yeah, we recently read this book called Overstory. It's a book, fiction, but interpreting many stories revolving around trees, and how the overstory and the understory and all the fungi and the
Yeah.
roots and everything are in such harmony and total symbiosis. It's amazing, and what you are doing for Karnataka and the world is uh, it's really divine. It's divine. No other word
I'm
for
very happy you read a book
it.
on actually, because
Yeah.
plants are the foundation for the entire universe. That's the part of food, web
Mm.
for everybody, including
Yeah,
humans.
the
And
basis, yes.
though we have cultivated plants now, our food is cultivated now, but at one point of time, it was all wild plants which we were eating. Even today, some communities still rely a lot on wild plants, but it forms the foundation of the entire ecosystem for
Yeah.
including for carnivores, because
Mhm.
herbivores' lives depends on plant food sources. Hence, it's very important to understand how plants benefit, or how the world benefits from plants, and how there are a variety of plants and their role in the ecosystem, their role in people's lives, not just lives, but also in culture, in religion, in so many other aspects
Mhm.
in
Mhm.
humanity. I would recommend a book called Trees in 80 Days. I think it's called Trees in
Mhm.
80 Days. It talks about
Mhm.
80
Mhm.
trees in different parts of the world. It's one of
Wow.
the beautiful books. In Kannada, there is a book called Hasiru Honnu by one author called B.G.L. Swami. It's hilarious
Uh-huh.
to read this book, how he introduces plants in a very hilarious manner, in a very funny manner. So I would
Right.
recommend these two books for people to read if they're
Okay. Thank
interested in
you.
plants.
That's great. Thank you. Hasiru Honnu and Trees in 80 Days. Now coming to us being, we are Bangaloreans by heart. I'm second generation Bangalorean. You live in Bangalore. And we are really blessed to have Lalbagh and Cubbon Park, which are unfortunately, always under threat with expanding Bangalore. And I also wanted to knit a few other conservation sort of styles. Like, for example, Sadhguru talks about saving soil and saving rivers. And there's always the other things, WWF and everything else. Now, what are the collaborative efforts that are happening? And you're doing so much for Karnataka, and Sadhguru is trying to do his sort of side of things. But what is this collaboration? Where do you see this in the future? Is there anything happening right now? How can everybody get together to make a bigger impact? I'm a Rotarian, so can Rotary also sort of join into this movement? So if you could just throw some light about these collaborative efforts, and if there
Uh,
are any.
Yeah, there are quite a lot of collaborative efforts. Our own collaborative effort, but it's an unusual, unconventional collaboration we have. Like I said
Uh-huh.
earlier, many people shun away from working with political leaders or bureaucrats, but we specialize in it. It's not a negative thing, but it's a very positive thing, because the scale of success can only
Yeah,
be possible if you work with the government. As
absolutely.
individuals or as small NGOs, perhaps you can save a smaller area, but only if you want to scale it up to a state level, to a large geographical area. Working with the government has no parallels. It certainly, the scales are much larger. What 100 people can achieve working together in 10 years can be achieved by working with the government within 5 years, perhaps. So
Absolutely.
that's the kind of
That's true.
impact you can bring. Otherwise, I couldn't have thought of bringing about 1 million acres of forest on the protected area network. it would not have been possible to grow that kind of forest at all. So the scale of efforts is very, if you think of scale of effort, you really need to pick your collaborators very carefully.
Mm.
But every person, every common person can actually contribute towards conservation. Maybe it can be a doctor, it can be an artist, it can be a computer software engineer. The opportunities are unlimited. But what I would suggest is you use your existing skills to work with people who are trained and who are experienced with conservation. It's like, if I like medicine, it doesn't mean tomorrow I can go and practice. I can't become an obstetrician, or I can't become a dentist. I can't be a surgeon, right? Just because I'm passionate about surgery, I can't be going and operating patients the
No,
very.
definitely
All I
not.
can do
No,
is
no.
go and.
We will leave conservation to you, sir. We just want some advice about how we can collaborate and make some change.
Yeah, that's why it's always important to collaborate with people who work. And like, for example, we work a lot with software engineers. They help us develop tools which makes our research much easier, less time consuming, and more efficient. So that's their contribution to conservation. I have bankers who work with me, but they bring in the critical resource of funding for us. They say, okay, we will help you through funding, how to bring in funding, how to manage your funds. They help us with their skills. Similarly, we have artists who come and say, okay, how can we contribute to conservation? And they do the artwork, and which inspires hundreds and thousands of children and also adults to get into conservation and help save nature. So you can be anybody in life. You can certainly contribute to do wildlife conservation or nature conservation. But I would say you always need to work with somebody who is experienced. That will bring you a better understanding. In the long run, your contributions are much more meaningful then. Say in wildlife conservation or nature conservation, what is very important is quantitative information. If you say, okay, I'm trying to do save elephants, one of my biggest benchmarks is to be seeing if elephant population or elephant habitat is increasing or decreasing, or has it remained stable. A positive success story shows elephant habitat or elephant numbers goes up, or it has remained stable. If it's going down, then it's showing that our work is not contributing positively towards the cause. It's like, if you're an obstetrician, if your deliveries are going well, your patients are healthy, the children that you're helping to give birth are also healthy. That's a good indicator, right? So that's how we need to look at conservation science as well. But unfortunately, a lot of people are missing this quantitative information. It's become too much of storytelling, which is important, but it also needs to be backed up with data.
Right. It's unfortunate, yeah. But I mean, when we expect a bigger impact, it doesn't happen. Yes, as you rightly said, I think government is the key. Now, you've said that everybody can contribute to conservation. If you were to mentor or inspire the next generation of conservationists, what what would you tell them? And what qualities do you think are essential for someone entering this field?
See, the best way to inspire people is to take them out to the forest. Just day before yesterday, I had taken two people from corporate sector to the forest, and they were when they got back, they said their most interesting time was when they showed them the elephant dung and how this dung itself is a world of its own. Made them to touch the elephant dung. Initially, they were very reluctant to do it, and when I showed them
Right.
footprint of elephants and showed them how the footprint of the elephant is in proportion to the height of the elephant. It actually means that twice the diameter of the elephant's footprint will be the actual height of the elephant. So these kinds of natural history experiences will inspire people. No amount of book, no amount of documentaries can inspire people as much as taking them to the field, showing them a beautiful bird, showing them some interesting things in nature. It can be a plant, its relationship with animals or with birds, that really moves them, that really sticks in their mind. Like these two gentlemen were from North India, and in North India, they have a huge culture of pan, right? So I showed them this tree called tree from which the pith of the tree is used as khatta for pan, that red liquid people put inside the pan.
Uh-huh,
It's a
uh-huh,
typical
right.
Asia statue. And then I showed them the tree and told them, look, this is what is used in your pan. And they were like, oh, mesmera. They said, we never knew that our pan katha comes from the forest. That
Ah,
relationship and the connect, how they are using
yes.
nature in their daily life will also motivate them to do something. But best
Mm-hmm.
thing is to show them an interesting character or a behavior of an elephant. Like I earlier said, I showed them elephant dung. I showed them how after the elephant dung dries up, the termites come in and break up the
Ah,
dung and make it bring it back to nature as soil. Or I told them the
mm,
relationship of how so many birds are dependent on elephant dung to eat because they come to eat the termites in the dung. Or how elephants eat a fruit and carry the seed in the stomach, and then they defecate 10 or 20 kilometers away, and the dung becomes the first manure for the seed which comes out of the dung, and it's also the protection against seed predators, and then a new plant comes out, and they were
yes.
very fascinated about it. I think the
Yeah, I
best thing
am
to
too.
inspire people is to take them to the forest.
That's sorry, very rightly said. So I think having those on ground experiences, grassroots experiences is what is going to move them for life and to make them a conservationist for life.
Yeah,
And the
I have
qualities.
incredible experiences with very, very incredible people. Even
Yeah.
today, the Dharmadhikari of the Dharmasthala,
Uh-huh.
Sri Virendra Hegde, he even today he remembers that I was the one who showed him the first wild tiger for him. I'm nobody,
Oh,
but he recognizes me even 25 years after I showed him the first tiger in the wild.
oh my
I have
God.
done it to Rahul Gandhi. I've showed him wildlife. I've taken the governor of Karnataka, cricket stars, including Anil Kumble, so many other people. So all of them will remember you because they have had unique experience and not just seeing a tiger. It's also all these small little things they'll always remember. And many of them have done wonderful things for wildlife after that experience in the
Ah,
forest. Anil Kumble is an
okay.
amazing supporter for wildlife conservation, and he has done a lot of background contribution for wildlife through his
Mm.
contacts. Because once he comes to the political arena, or when I say that political arena, if he comes into a government office or to Vidhan Saudha, a lot of doors open up. A lot of people
Ah,
listen to him. That's the kind of support you need. As a sports star, he has got huge fan followers, and you use
yes.
that for wildlife conservation.
Okay. Right. So you know how to pitch at various levels. So you have this thing for the eye of the tiger. So
Yeah.
what is it that you experience when you see the eye of the tiger? You
Once,
mentioned
way
somewhere
back
that.
in the late 90s, we were working in Ranthambore National Park or Ranthambore Tiger Reserve in Rajasthan. And it was in January, I remember, very cold mornings. And we had to walk to certain places within the forest to collect some scientific data on the herbivores, on the prey species of the tigers. So one morning in January, I and a friend of mine called Girish, who's a conservationist from Chikmagalur, we were walking in the forest, and very cold. So we were completely, packed,
Wrapped up.
mufflers and caps and monkey cap, hand glove, jackets, everything. And your sound is muffled then from the forest. So we were walking the jungle forest, I mean jungle road, and I somehow felt there was something on my left, and I just turned my eyes towards that direction, and I saw there was a tiger sitting about 10 meters away from us.
Oh
It was
God.
staring at me, and I was looking into its eyes. And even today, I can't believe and I can't forget the color of the eyes of the tiger. It's honey colored, and it's staring at you, and you're looking into its eye. It's mesmerizing. The tiger is just 10
Ah,
meters away from you. You're breathing, and you hear your own breathing, and you also hear the breathing of the tiger. And I just squeezed Girish's hand and I said, "Hey, Girish, there's a tiger." And I whispered to him that there is a tiger.
good.
And it
Right.
sat there for a while looking at us. It's unbelievable because there was a thin layer of mist in the forest, and the tiger was sitting
Yeah.
there. The forest were getting dry. It's very close to you. And then after a while, it got up, walked away for about another 10, 20 meters, looked back at you, and then vanished into the forest. This was more recent. In Bangalore, in Whitefield, there's a school called Vidgayar, and there was a leopard which had come there, and I was requested by the authorities to help them capture the leopard in the school. And unfortunately, there was an accident that day. and I saw the leopard at very close quarters, and I got injured. Unfortunately, it was an accident, and I saw the leopard at such close quarters. That beautiful jade green eyes. I'll tell you, it's unbelievable to see the color of these large cats, the eyes of the large cats.
Goosebumps. Right, sir. Ooh, and there's so much about the Eye of the Tiger. There's songs on Eye of the Tiger. There's so many poems on the Eye of the Tiger. And Eye of the Tiger itself is a phrase which is for you, which is, somebody behind the Eye of the Tiger is somebody as passionate and as determined as you are, who could face any adversity that comes in his way. So you do have an Eye of a Tiger. You're behind an Eye of a Tiger. We're almost about to wrap up, but I know, I mean, you've already told about incredible experiences in the wild, but could you share one or two of your most memorable or humorous stories in the field, from the field? Any humorous stories?
Humor is all over. Once we recently made a wildlife documentary, full-fledged documentary called Kaveri River of Life. And then this was about 3-4 years ago when we were shooting for the Tiger film. We were sitting along the banks of the river Kaveri, and we wanted a sequence of elephants coming into the river on a very hot day. And between the river and the forest, there was a long stretch of about 50 meters of very dry sand, white sand.
Okay.
And we were sitting and waiting for the elephants to come to the river in a hide. We were, of course, sitting in a hide, which is like a camouflaged small tent, a rectangular tent. And then suddenly we saw some monkeys getting down from the tree, but running on the sand to the water, drinking. And they slowed down when they came to the water, drank, and they would scoot back on the sand. And every monkey which came to the water was doing this action. They would get down from the tree, wait at the base of the tree for a few seconds, and then scoot over the sand, drink water patiently, relax, again scoot back. And I didn't know why it was happening. Only later I realized that the sand was so hot, they could only scoot over the sand. Otherwise, it would be it would be impossible for them to walk on the sand. But on that very hot day, we were very dry. It was like perhaps 42, 43 degrees in that sun. And we were waiting for elephants to come. It was hilarious to watch these monkeys run over the sand. And there's several other such instances. One more instance was when I was injured by the leopard in Bangalore, this accident I just recently told you. One very humorous email came to me from some wildlifer from Andhra Pradesh. He said, "Sir, I heard about this accident. I think you must not have been very seriously injured because you are wearing a full arm shirt." I was like, "What? How does a full arm shirt protect your hand from a leopard which has 2 inches of canines?" So it was very funny to read that story and or his email. And then later, or after a few years after, when I wrote this book, Shaಲೆಗೆ ಬಂದ ಚಿರತೆ ಮತ್ತು ಇತರ ಕಥೆಗಳು, this is more like a Kannada joke, and people who can understand Kannada will enjoy it. So I heard an author and a media person joking with somebody else saying that, hey, Sanjay Gubbi has written this new book called Shaಲೆಗೆ ಬಂದ ಚಿರತೆ and ಇತರ ಕಥೆಗಳು. He kept on impressing on the word and, because I was bitten by the leopard on my bumps. So in Kannada, you understand what and means. I heard him make this joke. ಶಾಲೆಗೆ ಬಂದ ಚಿರತೆ and ಇತರ ಕಥೆಗಳು.
Right. Okay. Very witty, very sense of humor high.
Yeah, very high
Right.
sense of humor. This media person certainly has it.
If you could ask every listener to do one thing to contribute to conservation, what would it be? I know there are many things that can be done, but one thing that they can do.
To conservation. Don't believe in fake news. There's a lot of fake news that's going around about wildlife conservation, especially about leopards these days. Don't believe in fake news. Always get it checked with somebody else. And next thing is, wildlife is part of our daily lives. We see it as God. Ganesha, of course, is the biggest wildlife we see in our prayer rooms, perhaps in our altar. And wildlife is primary for our survival. If there are no elephants, there'll be no forest. There'll be nobody who are regenerating forests. And if there are no forests, there is no water for you and me. Hence, conserving wildlife is primary for our survival. That's what I would like to tell you.
Absolutely. I think your book also mentions um, for rivers, they have to be mountains. So we have to save mountains,
Yeah,
and obviously for rivers, we need forests, and forest needs rivers. Everything is so um,
interconnect.
interlinked. Um, so how do you personally define success in your work? I mean, I know you might have a lot of projects, project lined up, but for you, what does success mean in your line of work? Is it about numbers, impact, or something more intangible? You say investment in conservation gives maximum returns in one of your talks. So could you define success in your own words?
Success is when you really feel very happy about for example, we got the Kaveri Wildlife Sanctuary expanded, made it double the size from what it was. So one day I was walking in this forest and I suddenly saw a tiger pug mark. That means tigers had started to come back to Kaveri Wildlife Sanctuary. That's the biggest happiness it brought to me. So it's not about the numbers, it's not about anything else, but it's about when you see a landscape, beautiful piece of forest, or when you see a tiger pug mark coming back to an area where it was not present before, you feel extremely happy inside. I think that's what really motivates us, and that is what the ultimate prize for us is all about, award for
Yeah,
us.
absolutely.
And if you see
That's
a
true.
landscape which we have fought to save, and if it continues to be a piece of forest or a grassland or a natural habitat or a river, and if you have contributed whatever little possible to save it, that's the biggest happiness, madam.
Yeah, probably you must have been so heartened by seeing tiger and cubs playing around. You must have had so many such, visuals, I'm sure. Oh, great. And what is the kind of legacy that you hope to leave behind, both for the natural world and for the people who follow in your footsteps?
Legacy is not just for us, madam. It's also for the future generation. It's all this beautiful forest teeming with the wildlife. What more do you need? Many people call me when they call me, or when they're talking, they say, "Oh, we went to this forest, or I went to this waterfall. I heard the birds singing, and I remembered you." People say that. That's the
Ah,
biggest legacy, I think. If people remember you in a place which is very beautiful, which is full of nature, and if they remember you and attribute it to you, that's the biggest legacy I think we can leave for this world.
so true, so true. And so, if you had unlimited resources, unlimited support from government, what's that one dream project that you would undertake?
I would love to have every protected area in Karnataka interlinked. If I get into a protected area, which is Banerghata National Park, right on the southern border of Bangalore city, I should be able to get out of Dandeli and Anchi Tiger Reserve up in Uttara Kannada. I should be able to walk only through protected areas without getting out of them. That's my dream for the
Ah,
country.
wow. Okay. May God bless you, sir. I hope it happens soon.
Thanks so much,
and if
madam.
and if you could have any superpower from the animal kingdom, what would it be and why? From the tiger, leopard, elephant, whatever. One superpower from the animal kingdom.
Patience of elephants.
The patience of an elephant.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's absolutely stunning, and the love they give to
Yeah.
their family, that's something very
Yeah.
unique to them. It's really unique to them.
Okay. Wow. Amazing. Patience is a huge virtue. Yeah. I lack it. So, as we wrap up, sir, what's the one message you'd like to leave our listeners with today?
Your family and friends are extremely important. Bank on them because during all the hard times, that is what has really given me strength, and that is what has given me the power to continue. Yeah, despite so many hardships we face in our field. So believe in them and always respect them.
Yes, sir. Coming to that, I think your son Ninada would be very proud of you. And having known Dr. Suma, having worked with her, I know what a rock she's been behind the scenes probably, but she's been a huge support to you, I'm sure. I know her personally, and she's an epitome of patience, isn't she?
Yeah, she is. Yes.
So, with that and with those inspiring words from you, we come to the end of today's episode of Luminary Lounge Insights from Lives Well Lived. Mr. Sanjay, thank you for taking us on this fascinating journey from the corridors of engineering to the wilderness of the Western Ghats, from heart stopping encounters with leopards to heartwarming stories of conservation success. Your work reminds us that passion, when coupled with persistence, can create lasting change. Whether it's protecting our magnificent big cats, empowering local communities, or inspiring the next generation of conservationists, your impact extends far beyond the forest boundaries. To our listeners, remember what Mr. Sanjay said. It's about humanity, compassion, empathy, and, pitching to the right stakeholders, because conservation, although is chaotic, is a very, very satisfying role that we can play. And this is what we owe our future. Each one of us owes our own future a big deal, because we have to obviously let our children and grandchildren inherit this beautiful earth. You can learn more about his work through his book, Leopard Diaries, and follow his conservation efforts at the Holimatti Nature Foundation website. And he's a program director, a program head of the Holimatti Nature Foundation. And so many efforts are going through that. And on Instagram handle at sanjay.gubbi, this is Dr. Aruna Muralidhar reminding you that every life well lived leaves a trail for others to follow. Thank you very much for your time, sir. I know you've just traveled back from Bandipur yesterday and you still made time for us. We really appreciate that from the bottom of our hearts. For our listeners, join us next time on Luminary Lounge for another inspiring conversation. Until then, stay curious, stay inspired. Thank you, sir. Any final words from you?
Always support nature. It will always support you.
That's true. Thank you so much indeed.